Oh, hi, we do have somebody with us. Hello, Barbara. I thought you were there and then you disappeared. I was going to mute you though, so I'm going to get cracking. So because you're on live, woohoo, you get your chart looked at first. So I'm going to get cracking because I am on the countdown to go to England on Tuesday and I've still got lots to do and I have a reading this afternoon. So I don't really have time to just kind of wait around. So I am getting moving. So the first thing I'm going to do is I want to look at the Virgo New Moon chart for you all. Okay, because we're going to look at this in your astrology, and also a little bit we're going to look at the full moon in Aries. It is on the 24th because we don't do the mini readings in those calls. Now, to my mind, the new moon is kind of a bit more significant in some ways because it's kind of the launch pad in wherever it takes part in your chart. And it's kind of the new beginnings, the new cycle. And this one is pretty powerful, coming off the back of the summer, of all the retrogrades and all the eclipses. 3 eclipses where we normally have 2, 7 retrogrades, which is really, if you count Chiron, which is pretty rare to have that many retrograde at one time. And we're coming, as I do this call, Saturn has just gone direct and Pluto goes direct at the end of the month, September the 30th. But then we have Venus going retrograde on October the 5th. So, we're not completely out of the waters yet, so to speak. But we'll talk more about Venus retrograde later. Or you've got the option to join my Venus retrograde class at 30% discount, I think I offered. So anyway, and that is the Venus retrograde, not about the class. Venus retrograde is the least retrograde of all the planets, if that makes sense. It's the one that spends least time retrograde. So that kind of makes Venus retrograde very impactful. But again, we'll talk about that more next month on probably talk about it a bit on the full moon call and also on the next new moon call. Anyway, I'm rambling and moving ahead. So this new moon, the Virgo new moon, takes place at 17 degrees of Virgo, and it's opposing Neptune, which makes it very about practical mysticism, bringing the unconscious and the connection with spirit and your imagination and magic and muse and mystery, and very much bringing it down to earth and making it practical. And how can I make this practical, and how can I make this of service? We hear a lot about ascension in the woo world, so to speak, but I'm very convinced that we are not here to ascend. We're here to evolve and learn soul's lessons and things, but we're very much on this planet to learn. Oh, hi, Melanie. Hello, welcome, your first call. We're here to bring things down to earth and to be of service. And how can we connect with the muse, the mystery, the unconscious spirit, and make it real and make it I'm just going to mute you all for now. Okay. So anyway, so it's opposing the Neptune. I've talked about that. If you've listened to the podcast, I also talked quite a bit about this. And incidentally, those of you that have listened to my podcast, I would like your opinions in the group, Facebook group, about it, about whether it works, the mix of Jen and I as a conversation, or whether you'd prefer it differently. I've had a few kind of comments about people would prefer to have me doing it on my own. Maybe I just start another one and do this one monthly. I don't know. We'll see. But anyway, I go off track. So this new moon is also aspecting, it's in a sextile to Jupiter in Scorpio. So that's a deep and expansive water. Scorpio is like the deepest ocean. It's that point right in like the Marianas Trench where the water's very still and dark. And it's a wonderful, murky, magical place, Scorpio. But with Jupiter there, Jupiter has been expanding that depth and bringing it to our attention. Okay, with most specifically with the Me Too movement, but other things too. And then the new moon is also in aspect to Pluto in Capricorn, who has been really kind of digging into our institutions that we live by, the rules that we live by, both as a society and individually, for quite some time. And this new moon is really going to dig into more of that. And so far, what we've looked at is just earth and water. So it's really about molding something to move forward, coming back off this crazy summer. And this Neptune in Pisces is very much about surrender and letting go. Okay, there's a huge amount of that energy in this. Letting go of what's not working, surrendering to the messages that you're getting from the universe, and then moving forward in more practical and somebody called it an inventory, a little bit like an inventory. With the Mercury moved into Virgo, that rules Virgo, a Virgo new moon. Virgo is very analytical, kind of organizing. So it's about really taking an inventory of where you're at and where you're going forward with. So yeah, we've got all that. I'm not going to talk about everything in the chart, but I do want to point out a couple of other things. Okay. We have a cardinal T-square because Ceres is today actually opposing Chiron. And Ceres is about forgiveness, unconditional love. She's the great mother. She was Demeter. She's the mother of Persephone, and she had to work on forgiveness and letting go of her daughter for 6 months of the year after she'd been in mourning. So there's a great deal of energy around that as well. And of course, Chiron, he gets called the wounded healer. If you listen to the podcast, I'm a bit over that description of him. I prefer the maverick shaman because, yes, he did have the wound, and he swapped the wound with the guy that's Prometheus. So that and then he gave his immortality to Prometheus to heal Prometheus, and then so was able to die from his wound. So it's kind of it's a mythical story, but in astrology, I think really we need to look at him more in his life as well. He was the centaur who was very different. A lot of centaurs were kind of a bit base and drunkard and partiers and things like that. Chiron was a teacher, a healer, shaman, philosopher. He's kind of very Sagittarian. A lot of people think, because Sagittarius is the half man, half horse, but Chiron had the front two legs were human. Okay, so he's kind of more human than animal nature, because and a lot of people think that Chiron actually rules through the signs from Virgo right through to Sagittarius. So he's kind of but anyway, I digress. So I do think that opposition's quite important on this new moon, and it's forming a T-square to Saturn, who has just gone retrograde. So again, about the rules, Saturn in Capricorn, about building our own structures to live by, our own rules to live by. So there's that important too. We also have an Earth Grand Trine here. Saturn's involved in a lot of ways. So there's a couple of areas of the chart we're going to look at. We're going to look at if you've got anything around 0 to 2 degrees. And I say around because that's being triggered. The Earth Grand Trine has got great potential, but the only trouble is it gets stuck, kind of going round and round, doesn't have anywhere to go. So if we notice, Venus is building to an opposition with Uranus there. So this is where the kind of the outlet is and the potential. And again, it's in Scorpio. There's some deep psychological and emotional healing to come on this new moon. Okay. And really, you know, the sextile opposition to the new moon to Jupiter, that's an opportunity. That's a very forward-moving aspect. And then Venus in Scorpio. So in a way, we could say the potential of this new moon is in Scorpio more than anywhere else, really. So there's an awful lot going on, but we're going to look around 0 to 2 degrees. We're going to look around 17 degrees too, because that's clearly where the new moon is. Clearly, we're going to look at these main signs more in your charts. And we might look a little bit at where Mars, because Mars is kind of still causing havoc at the end of Capricorn, but the focus is going to be on those other areas because they're pretty much covering almost every sign. But mostly it's earth and water, apart from the Ceres Chiron opposition, which is very much about the who am I now kind of energy in Aries, the I am, and the we are. And this is a kind of about we're being asked with Chiron in Aries to kind of become this new person that we are after all these changes that we've had. Okay, so I'm going to do things slightly differently to what I normally do on charts, and I'm going to do what I've started to do on readings, and I'm going to actually share my software so that I can do the bi-wheel and show you all that and move things around. I've been doing this more and more on my actual one-on-one sessions, and it's really kind of helpful. So I am going to just open your charts one by one. So it'll be Barbara first, then Melanie, and then Jenny, and then Jenna. Okay, because that's the order you came on the call. Then I'm going to go to the group and see who else I've missed. Oh, somebody's gone. Melanie's gone. She did say she couldn't. Oh, she's back. I know. Okay, so I was just saying it's going to be Barbara first, then you, Melanie, then Jenny, then Jenna, because that's the order you came on the call. If you've got any questions after I've kind of looked at it, please unmute and ask. But bear in mind that I do have, I think it's 14 of these to do. So try and make your questions succinct and pointed. Okay. I can't cover everything in mini readings. The idea of these mini readings is to develop and help you evolve over time, not to kind of cure everything in one session. And I only say that because there's a couple of new people on these things. So I am going to put the Virgo new moon around your chart, Barbara, first of all. So we look to where the new moon is, and it's at 17 degrees. And then I'm going to look what is aspecting on your chart, and instantly I see that it's making an aspect, a sextile aspect to your 12th house Uranus in Cancer. That and that's at 16 degrees. That's kind of less, but we'll talk about that too. A bit to your moon, but the main aspect is to this, and the fact your Chiron is being transited by Pluto. So we're going to look at that line, basically, Chiron to Uranus. Now, the Chiron-Uranus opposition is what's called kind of a generational aspect. A lot of people born around the same time natally have that aspect natally, Chiron-Uranus opposition, and it moves through different signs, but yours is in Cancer and Capricorn. I have it in, what do I have it in? Aquarius and Leo. But so let's look at the houses, and that was just a teaching moment, nothing to do with your personal reading, really. I'm going to say that the Virgo, because this new moon is in Virgo and opposing Neptune in Pisces, and this is in an earth house, Taurus, and this is in a water house ruled by Scorpio, kind of naturally. And your Chiron is in the house that's ruled by Virgo, and your Uranus is in the house ruled by Pisces. So we've got an awful lot of earth water going on here, and an awful lot of kind of revelatory kind of breakthrough energy coming on this new moon about your self-worth, about your self-esteem, how you earn your money is going to be triggered. It's going to be a real, and I find it interesting that this 8th house is often about, your bonding with other people. This is, and it doesn't mean you have to let go of the people. And what I'm getting of this is kind of a process of sudden letting go of attachment to, I'm thinking particularly of your parents, Barbara, and it's a process. All our parents, hopefully our parents die before us. It's kind of the natural order of things. My own dad died 21 years ago now, but what this awakens in me is kind of reaching a point of acceptance and kind of a starting to think about where you're going to go with your life after they leave. Does that make sense to you? It's kind of an emotional journey of letting go and release and being prepared. So I don't know if you can talk, and you can tell me if it makes sense, or you can tell me in the chat box or whatever. But that's really what it feels to me, that it does make sense. Cool, yeah. Barbara says in the chat it does make sense. So, I'm not suggesting that one of them's going to die on this new moon, because I don't believe we can predict death. This is your soul kind of preparing for it, and really preparing to move forward, just as we do at any major life transition, like kids leaving for college and things like that. Only obviously this one's even bigger. So that's really the main theme for you, I'm thinking, Barbara, on this new moon. And it might be something that's worth journaling a little bit about for you, and the voice or the communication and journaling thing comes for you here. Ceres on this new moon is crossing your Lilith, and the full moon is actually the full moon on the 24th is actually in Aries. I think it's at 1 Aries. Let me check. Yes, 1 Aries. So that's actually kind of on this Lilith line here as well. And that's kind of Hello, Rose. That's kind of saying to me that there's really going to be, you know, a lot of perception and changing, and how am I going to move forward in this? Kind of some taking some information in and some fulfillment about where you, oh, everybody's coming in, yay. Some fulfillment on the full moon about your kind of what's true for you, where you're going to move forward on your own. I could, you know, even see some movement coming on your own after the full moon, you know, and I'm talking months ahead. It's like kind of more travel and things like that. And it's like, who am I? Who am I? How am I going to live my Lilith in? Oh, God, my husband keeps texting me. Sorry about that. It's my fault. I texted him 30 minutes ago. So he's not responding. And it dings on my computer. I love Macs. I know there's a way to turn it off, and I haven't figured that out yet. So anyway, Barbara, any quick questions on that before I kind of move on? Cool. Yeah, I think it's going to have bring up some deep feelings for you, but yeah, it's all going to be good. Yeah, I can imagine. It's a kind of a tough time, but it's also a very, you know, I was kind of with my father when he died, and I can say it's actually a very profound experience. And those of you that have known me for quite some time know that just about a year and a half ago, I experienced it with a neighbour I was very close to and who I love dearly. And I kind of helped her to have a good death as well. So, Egad, what's Egad? Sorry, I don't know what that means. But anyway, it can be a very profoundly beautiful experience to help somebody through their last and face their mortality and facing it within you too. It can be a beautiful, beautiful time if you, because quite honestly, having been around people that die naturally or die from, you know, have time to prepare, they're ready when they go. So, yeah. Okay, so Melanie, hello. And Melanie, I'm just going to get your email up that you sent me. Especially with all this travel going on and things, my memory is not what it used to, or I've got so much going on. So some days I'm a bit like, you know, bear in mind I get affected by these women energies too. So, oh, so Melanie said we're just getting to know each other. So, yeah. So, am I okay kind of reading a few words from your email? I'm not going to read the whole thing, Melanie, but just say yes or no, just to kind of get my mind in the way. Oh, I didn't get time to Google Gemini Moon. Yeah, I am, thank you. So Melanie feels like she has too many things going on at once, scattered thoughts. That's very Gemini Moon, yeah. But so, which is why I have to remind myself. To be honest, I think, you know, I'm going to look it up and read what he said at some point. But I think some astrologers are very negative and don't look at the positive qualities. And Gemini Moon, Kai Pacha has Gemini Moon. I have Gemini Moon. I have some amazing Gemini Moon friends. Gemini Moon is very, we're just curious, endlessly curious. And I hate the way it's been made wrong. Okay. Okay, great, Barbara. Okay. No worries. I'm glad you got the first reading too. Okay. And so you know, don't take one astrologer's kind of reading of Gemini moon. Gemini are natural teachers and endlessly curious and always students, always learning. Now, there's a book. I've got to get you a book title, and I cannot remember what it's called at the moment, which is kind of funny, but we're very interesting. But there's a book that, Scanners. Okay, do you like to read? I cannot remember the author, but there's a book called Scanners. Yes, well, look up the book called Scanners. It's about people like us who need multiple interests. We're always told all our lives, focus, 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 focus. Well, bullshit. Some of us can't. So that book might be really helpful to you. If I remember afterwards, I will, or prompt me in the group. If you can't find the book, prompt me in the group, and I will look for. It's on my bookshelf, but I don't want to run off and do it now. But anyway, you truly feel that you block any mystical abilities that you have. Well, I'd say yes, you probably do. Because you're very mercurial. So you've got a lot of Virgo, and this new moon is triggering it. And your Mercury is in Virgo, and your Mercury rules the Gemini moon, and your Mercury rules your ascendant, and your Mercury rules your midheaven. So Mercury is your ruling planet in spades. Mercury is your most important planet. And it's interesting that you have come into this community on this new moon, basically, because the moon and the new moon is conjunct your Mercury. And it's in your 12th house, though, which is the connection with spirit, mystery, trusting the messages you get from the collective, wherever you think it's coming from, whatever it is that sends us messages that don't come from this, our lower mind, and from, you know, school and learning. This is stuff that comes in from elsewhere, and it's the mystical abilities, so we might want to call them. Yours are very strong in you with all that Virgo in, but you've had some past life trauma around it, if not childhood trauma, with Mercury and Pluto conjunct. You've quite likely been imprisoned in past lifetimes. You keep hearing both, what, from other people and from spirit. So I kind of think it's the same thing personally. But why you're blocking it is this past life stuff. And Uranus conjunct Pluto in the 12th house is kind of past life trauma. This is, you've probably been punished. You're probably burned at the stake for being a witch, you know. It's that kind of energy, which leads to you blocking it in this lifetime. And the answer, really, I mean, you know, I'm kind of summing up what very quickly what I would probably spend hours on it but we'll talk about it more at length. Is to move to this opposite point, is through using it in service. Okay, to heal. You do have strong. Oh yes, exactly why you resonate with Joan of Arc. You resonate, yes. You could have been Joan of Arc in another lifetime. It's this kind of energy, okay? And your challenge in this lifetime and your soul's evolution is to move beyond that and go, you know, it's a different time. I don't have to be punished in this. I can use it to help others and heal and teach others. There's a big element of teaching about this. Yeah, do you know? Oh God, I'm having my memories. Do you follow Matt Kahn? I'm gonna put think that's how you spell it. Do you follow him on Facebook? Yeah, that's how you spell it. He's a spiritual teacher and a channeler kind of thing. But you have the ability to kind of be almost a kind of Matt Kahn figure. You know, it doesn't have to be as big as him. It doesn't have to be as major. But you are a healer and a teacher. And this is, and with the Gemini, I will say one downside to the Gemini moon, and especially with it being close to your midheaven, which is kind of your mission or your contribution in this lifetime, is that we can stay in constant student mode and never teach what we know. Okay. You've got the Sun and Venus together in the 11th house, which the 11th house is always talked about as friends and things like that, but it's also a big message. Okay. And Leo is the stage and shining and saying, yes, I'm willing to let you shine, to let you see me and shine. But it's this past life trauma that's blocking you. And this new moon, and Mercury, look at Mercury on the new moon. Mercury, your ruling planet, is triggering that past life trauma and saying, I think maybe you should investigate, kind of thing. And there's me saying come out of student mode, or investigate your feelings about it rather than reading about other people's. Journaling, writing, talking to somebody about this past life trauma and about how it makes you feel. So when you read this, like the story of somebody like Joan of Arc, what does that make you feel? Does it bring up fear that it could be you too? Or do you really admire her? Would you like to be her, but avoid the burning at the stake bit, obviously, because we don't really do that anymore. So, and as well, though, look at this Neptune on your Chiron. This new moon is triggering your healing abilities, and I believe that's why you've come to this community at this point. Not suggesting I'm the only one that can do it, but but you've found you had a. Yeah, I think some of it was childhood. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm not trying to sell to you because I hate selling to you guys, but I really think the Venus retrograde journey course where you get 30% off as a member of my group would be really beneficial to you, because we'll be doing some shamanic work in that. And Venus is conjunct your sun. And let's look where Venus retrograde is for you. It's in your second house. So this is all about your self-esteem, your self-worth. Venus turns retrograde on your true Black Moon, Lilith, Neptune. Your mystic, psychic abilities, whatever you want to call them, are being activated. And I think having some support around that could help. In the Venus retrograde class, we'll be doing dismemberment journeys, soul retrieval, all kinds of things like that. So, because I do that work as well. I don't really talk about it that much because I just never sell the one-off. I do it more as part of my classes and things. So I hope that's kind of helped you for now. Oh, but you talked about the mental illness, blah, blah, blah. Well, I have opinions around what has been classified as mental illness for many women. You know, a lot of them were told they were mad because they could not handle their mystical abilities, I believe. So there's another way of looking at what was mental illness. I do too, Melanie, it's fine. Yeah, just stick with us, you know, for a bit. And I think it's a case of gently allowing it to come out, okay? Start with people you trust. Start with like this group. start with. People, when I came out as an astrologer, an astrologer is more acceptable. It was, a lot of people think astrology is bullshit, and I use my intuition a lot when I do astrology. You have to learn to kind of protect yourself and bounce that back off. And there's questions like, is this mine or is this theirs? That's another one. There's a returning judgment to sender with love. There's being willing to accept judgment, because people are going to judge. Judges going to judge. And we just have to kind of, if we choose, reach the point where we're okay with it. So I think that's probably all the time I can spend on that for now, Melanie, but it's a good start. Do know that you can ask questions in the Facebook group or on Patreon. I did the Facebook group because I already had some people who were in a Facebook group. Pray for you. Okay. Oh, well, yeah. But no, it's more about them than you, the judgment. Okay. Another good book, so there's Scanners, and another good book that is kind of life-changing, really, and a simple, small one, is The Four Agreements. The Four Agreements helps you to stop taking it personally and learn how to not take things personally, and know that, people are judging all the time, and usually it says more about them than it does you. Okay. So Jenny was next. Cool. And I'm glad you're here. And I hope you'll consider the Venus class, but I'll send you the details. Hey, Jenny.
So my subpoena thing was canceled, which I had a feeling it was going to be. So I'm very excited to make your call.
Is that completely cancelled or postponed?
No, they said that it's the trial thing's not happening today, and they'll just re-subpoena me.
Nice.
Yeah, thanks.
I take it the hospital support you then.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. So it's not like you're just on your own.
No.
Good. Okay.
Thanks.
So the new moon, it's not quite as crazily like in your face impactful as it was for Melanie, because you don't have that 12th house crazy stuff going on from past lives, but it is in your 12th house. So it is activating your kind of more mystical abilities and your creativity, but kind of that, the muse kind of creativity more than, which I know you've been finding is being activated for quite some time. So let's look what else it's aspecting. Okay. So it's interesting that I talked about Ceres in the first bit, which you might have missed. So you might want to go back and listen. But Ceres is, she's really about unconditional love, forgiveness, all that kind of energy. She was the great mother, Demeter, who lost her daughter, whose daughter Persephone was kidnapped into the underworld. So her themes are really about a lot of unconditional love and forgiveness. And how are things? I know you were having a little rough moment with your husband. I know generally you're very happy, but
yeah, we got to a really bad argument, and of course my ego, everything's all his fault. But then I actually did some writing, realized that he's just tired of this up and down with me, like drinking and self-medicating. And so I actually went back to my art therapist, and today I'm off work and basically I'm off for the weekend. Today would have been the day that I would be like self-medicating, like, just, I don't know why, when I'm home and no work, so I'm in a better place.
Yeah. So it's realizing that change always begins with you, really, and any blame and shame kind of energy is real projection, because which is true. And that's a lot of what this Ceres in your 8th house is about, and the new moon is kind of triggering that. For Virgo, if you listen to the a couple of things I've done, probably the podcast, I don't know, all kinds of things, is about becoming whole unto yourself. And that doesn't mean that you don't need people, but it just means you know that you can only change yourself, you can only deal with yourself. It's nobody else's fault, apart from like childhood abuse, but we're talking as adults here. So, but Ceres in the 8th house, being triggered by it, that's in your most deeply bonded relationships by and that means like this is the true marriage house, really. So I think it's going to be a constant for you, but this new moon is going to bring real themes of kind of taking responsibility completely, and it sounds like you're already feeling it for yourself in that deeply bonded relationship, but also being willing to have unconditional love and acceptance and forgiveness for anything that he does do that because he's not perfect either. He's like nobody is. So it's about deep acceptance. Sorry,
in that aspect, he doesn't really mind the art creativity so much. He doesn't really get it, but my spirituality, like as far as smudging and things like that, I think is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So we just kind of came to an impasse that like he doesn't care what I do, but he doesn't really want to hear about it.
Yeah, well, my husband's not into it, so
and that's okay.
I think that's part of the deep acceptance and forgiveness thing as well, that they've got their path, you've got yours, you can still choose to travel together. You don't have to like everything he does, he doesn't have to like everything you do. We kind of make a joke about things like the smudging now. I just go, I'm going to do my witchy stuff now, and he just laughs about it, but he doesn't want to know what it's all about and that's okay. And it is an adjustment though when you really start doing this stuff in your life, because I didn't do this stuff forever, and at one point I was not letting him see any of it, and kind of that's worse. It's just about carrying on doing your thing, but not feeling like you have to explain it to them all the time and say, well, this is why I'm doing it and stuff like that. They don't want to know. So and it's fun. So let's look what else it's aspecting. Eris is, and I was
also wondering. You had said something about looking at Hecate.
Oh yes.
In my chart.
Oh damn! I'd forgotten. That's on my laptop. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to get your chart up on my laptop and just do a little post about that in the group, if that's all right.
Be lovely.
Yeah, because I did promise to do it, and my Gemini moon's so scattered at the minute with going to England.
Oh, no.
So I forgot. But I will do it because I'd like to have a look. Angela says she has a similar relationship with her husband too. I think a lot of us do. A lot of, the kind of the divine feminine energy. Women are opening up to their more witchy powers that's been kind of shamed for years. Like I said in Manny's little thing about the mental illness thing, a lot of women were called mentally ill because they were doing this kind of stuff. The patriarchy's kind of dying. We just got to carry on doing our thing and not let their opinion of it stop or change us. Now, interesting, the new moon is also aspecting your Mars in Scorpio, so that's saying, really, to me, that's saying you've just got to keep going for it and diving deeper and doing your thing, and that means in terms of the creativity and everything, but they're all connected. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. Now I do want to quickly look, and if you've got any questions, ask, but I just want to quickly look where the full moon will be in Aries and Libra. So the full moon for you will be right opposite your Ceres. So we've got Ceres aspected there, Ceres aspected here. I might actually, because Ceres is quite strong at the moment, it's a bit cheaty, but I might actually take pictures of some pages out of my book on the asteroid goddesses, rather than me talking about her at great length on this call, because I've got a lot of readings to get through. But it kind of explains a lot about her, talks about her, and just to get to know her a little bit. But it talks about her psychological themes. And as I mentioned, they are unconditional acceptance. Self-image and self-worth is another one. And I think that's what you've been dealing with a lot. And
can you just say like how you said Ceres was aspecting? How would you?
So the full moon, the new moon is at 17 Virgo, and she's aspecting your natal by trine, which is a 120-degree aspect, your natal Ceres, which is at 17 degrees Taurus. But the full moon is at 1 degree of Aries, which will oppose Ceres on it. And it's in that 12th house where all this stuff's going on. Okay. So, you know, Ceres is kind of just triggering the same areas of your chart, is kind of what I'm trying to say, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of pretty major that your connection, like Melanie, your connection with the psychic abilities, whatever you want to call them, is really coming up.
Yes. So, and I know you don't like to advertise yourself, but do you think your, I forget what you called it, that
Venus retrograde class? Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that would be beneficial to help move some of that? I can feel it inside. I just don't know how to get it up and out.
Yeah, I think it would, because I will be doing the shamanic work in it. Angela did the class last time. Jenna did it too. They would be willing to tell you their experience. And I think it's going to be even better this time, because it's second time around of doing it. Mm-hmm. And it's in Scorpio, so it's going into those very deep places. Jenna says changed her life. There you go. That's kind of why they stick with me, because they took that class, and it's like, there you go.
Okay. And then one last question. I've been trying to do like shamanic journeys, but it's like I just can't quite get to that theta state. Would this class kind of help me, or should I maybe keep?
No, it will help. It will help. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of even deeper doing it. Rose did the class too. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. A pretty heavy statement. I mean, that's pretty amazing. That's a pretty amazing testimonial.
Yeah. So I'm really proud of it, but and I do know it's going to go deeper this time, because last time was in Aries, and this one, well, you know, I learned from what worked and what worked best the first time. But shamanic dismemberment journeys and things really should be done guided, and we'll be doing that, and huge for bonding the community. So yeah,
I like that guide. I think that's what I'm missing, is that guided.
Yeah, yeah. I try to encourage people to do it on their own, but really,
but when they're first starting out, it's kind of
exactly. Yeah. And we'll be doing one on every call of some kind. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your reading, and I'm going to do a little bit of reading, like Googling what you told me. Yeah. And then I'd love to read what you post at the pages too. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks, Jenny.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you.
So Jenna, are you able to talk, or are you?
Yes, I can talk.
Cool.
Yeah, kids are back in school. My life is resumed.
Yay. Oh, of course, I don't have your chart on this one, so because like difficulty with this software.
Yeah.
So give me a minute. I'm just going to get your chart up. I thought to do that before. I just have to find it from my downloads. I never did hear from them about that. Maybe they're just searching and.
We'll get back to you soon.
That's weird. Nobody else's chart has done that. It's kind of weird.
Is it because it's so far into 29 degrees? So it just jumps me forward?
Well, I think it is, yeah, but it's clearly wrong, because every other software it does it.
Yeah.
I'm just going to have to make sure I'm getting the right one up too. Which one am I doing? Porphyry. Yay, first one, right time.
Hmm.
Get the chart. Okay. But I am noticing when I do transits and things, I think it must be really hard to get software exact.
Yeah.
I am noticing that occasionally software differs slightly when things are very close to the edge of a sign. So, but I think clearly you are Leo. You know,
Yeah.
I would say. So we're going to say Astro Gold's wrong on that one. But anyway. So how are you feeling today after all your
I'm feeling all right. I've been having the anxiety that I used to have. It's not as bad as it was, but it seems like whenever I have to make these decisions or I feel on the spot, it starts to spike again. But I'm okay. I'm feeling very comfortable in my decision to take time to think about it.
good?
He was trying to push me to decide last night, and I refused to. So
I knew he
yeah,
would. That's why I said in my post, don't be pushed, because I knew he would. Because so the new moon is in your first house. Okay, so
hmm,
all this energy piling up into your first house right now, and of course that's opposing your relationship house. Now I'm going to be bluntly honest because we've known each other for so long.
yeah,
I was kind of wary when it went so fast with him.
hmm,
I know you felt like you were in control, but I don't think you had got clear analysis of what that meant for you in a relationship like this. Okay,
yeah,
because instantly, kind of his children were there right from the start, things like that. There's also this new moon is also aspecting your Saturn in Sagittarius in your fourth house. And Saturn, of course, is boundaries, bonds, sat in Sagittarius, truth around your home. I can't tell you whether to stay with him or break up with him. That's not going to say. But what I do, I suggested it in the group last night, the list of pros and cons. What are your boundaries around your own home and your inner home as well? This is clearly feeling uncomfortable for you, that it's transgressing your boundaries. I think
yeah,
very much so, and it's allowing him to take the control over it. So I think it's either you've got to kind of take control back of your boundaries and say, okay, let's step back and let's take the children out of it for now and just like work on just us. And if he doesn't like it, he's probably got to go.
Well, the other issue is that right now, like his children, um, they went to the school that my mom works at for a short time, and now that it's back to school, my mom had gone and asked the one teacher how, like, just kind of mentioned the kid's name without any background, and the teacher's eyes bulged out of her head, and she started to go on about how he was a compulsive liar, he had a lot of behaviors, he bullied, he was never doing his work, he wasn't listening, and just was not a nice kid to have around. And then that the father was always on his side and would never listen to any of the teachers or the principal or anything else. So it's also very indicative of how it's been in the relationship where I've been seeing all these behaviors from his son. And when the kids are all together, I can see how it impacts my children. And I also have all this information where it's like, I haven't talked to him about that, obviously, but it's something that, like, I don't want to be the stepmother to that type of child, right?
For sure, yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm nearly 59. I've been around the block a few times, shall we say.
Yeah.
And the warning bells for me are, well, things like that. There's a reason his wife tried to kidnap those kids,
Yeah.
and we may think the court picked him because he's the best parent, or is he the most controlling parent and managed to put the best story forward?
Yeah.
He's ringing a lot of warning bells for me. And where did the kid get that behavior from? So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So clearly I'm not going to make your decision for you. But we've known each other a long time, so I feel I can be a bit more blunt.
Yes, please. I really appreciate your honesty.
Welcome. But with it being in your first house, you know, I went back to what I said to Melanie about being whole unto yourself. I think you've got to decide what that means for you.
Yeah.
And it was exciting, you know. Don't make yourself wrong for getting into this relationship. You know, it was the first kind of real relationship you've had since your marriage ended. And you've had some good out of it, surely, as well. You know, you've learned some good lessons and things. I have a feeling it's going to be hard to continue it.
Yeah.
And the full moon is also right on your north node. On the 24th. So, and that's in the 8th house, and kind of that's, you know, go deep into this and go deep into your own kind of who you are in relationships. You've grown so much, so don't go back and like, oh, like it's, I can feel it actually with it, that part of you is saying, why can't I pick good better guys, and you know, things like that.
Yeah, and it's also though I don't want to fall into the trap I have before where I feel like that discomfort is a sign that I should stay, because it's just a discomfort because it's an uncomfortable situation and he doesn't want it to end, but I don't feel like it's a right situation for me right now. So, and I've grown so much that I don't want to lose all that I've accomplished as well. So,
Good for you.
yeah.
That's what I feel too. It's really, you know, it's almost perfect timing, as everything always is. It's
Yeah.
come up on this new moon in your first house, which is about who I am, and I'm not going to let anybody take over that and control that. And then the full moon coming up 2 weeks afterwards, right on your moon's nodes. That's like, that's like, you know, allowing others to have power over you in the 8th house versus standing on your own 2 feet in the 2nd house and your own self-worth and things. So personally, I feel even if, you know, you kind of remain open to him going and doing some work and coming back to you eventually, I think that's a bit toxic for you.
Okay.
Would you agree?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
That's how I've been feeling. And there were all these alarm bells coming up, and I just needed kind of that affirmation, because I believe in all of this so much too, that I wanted to make sure that I wasn't just panicking and jumping out as well, that I could see everything.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. So I pulled a quick card for you because I know it's a big thing for you, but you do sound, I mean, I know it's brought up. Oh, could I speak up? Let me, do you know, I'm actually going to pause the recording after I finish with Jenna and go and get my proper microphone. I unplugged it and put it in my laptop and I forgot to put it in here. But but I'm just going to finish because Jenna can clearly hear me. So
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I just pulled a card because, you know, I know you've got some anxiety coming up around it, but breaking up with somebody is kind of tough. It's hard. So yeah, that's kind of normal.
Yeah.
So just forgive yourself for feeling a bit discomforted and having to stand up for yourself and claim your power and all that. That's probably a good sign, really, that you're kind of growing again. So I pulled a card and I got this power card, which is the sun in Capricorn. And I talked all about boundaries and all that kind of thing. It's about really coming into your center and bringing in your own power. So that's your card.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So just bear with me 1 second.